Alrighty, well thank you for coming to my auditorium, the Frank Auditorium. Family owned for a long time, like the Kellogg's who own the cereal, they own the hospital, we own the auditorium. So welcoming, I enjoy it. Metaphysical theorist, I made that up. How you like that? Is that a pretty good word? Yeah, it's kind of an interesting word. It's kind of an interesting word. It's a little, I can't really claim I'm a metaphysical physicist. I'm an astrophysicist. I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson or I'm Michio Kikuchi. I'm not that. I'm not, so I can't say I'm an astrophysicist. So I made up a word. A metaphysical theorist. So I'll talk a little bit about how I got there. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about why would we present a model for the reality of existence. And there's some very basic reasons. There is only one reality. There is only one reality. Everybody doesn't get their own reality. The Jews don't get one. The Muslims get another. The Christians get another. The atheists get another. Dogs get another. E.T. phone home. They don't get another one. Everybody gets the same reality. And the question is can we figure it out? Can we come up with what that reality is? And probably more importantly is it going to help us in this world, make a little better world that we live in, if we know what the real reality is? Taking out the dogmas, taking out the science, taking out all the pieces. If we understood it, are we going to make a better place to live? So you kind of start with a theory. Everything needs to start with a theory or a model or something. So this is my model. Now, this is a virgin presentation for this model, because it's the first time I'm actually giving it. I actually developed the fundamentals of this about 5-6 years ago, and then when I got involved in IANDS, I put it aside. I set it aside. Once I got on the board of directors, I said, oh, there's potential conflicts with this because could be controversial. If we understood reality, it can be very controversial. Why can it be controversial? There's a couple of fellas, a father and a son, Oliver Wendell Holmes. How many people have heard of Oliver Wendell Holmes? Either the father or the son. Okay, everybody. I mean, there's almost everybody. Well, the father, he was a physician, professor, writer. I think he was a professor at Harvard all through the 1800s. He lived through the core of the 1800s. And a philosopher, poet, writer, he said something. Truth is tough. Truth. Reality is truth. It will not break like a bubble at the touch. Nay, you may kick it around all day like a football, and it will be round and full of eating. Reality is what it is. It's tough. It can hurt. And some of you will probably, in the middle of this session today, you're going to be grinding at me. Ooh, how could he possibly say that? How could he make that part of his model? Because that's not, I don't believe that. And that's okay. You don't have to believe what I believe. And I'll go into a little more depth about so I can kind of buffer that. Because some of you are going to get upset at me. That's why I set all of my personal stuff aside. I set it all aside when I got involved in IANDS, because IANDS has a very specific purpose, is to help people who have touched the other side and came back. And that was the purpose. So I set it aside because I didn't want to get involved. And I'm really saying, if we understand reality, then I believe we can change the world. We can make a difference. All right, a little bit more about me. You've kind of read the overview, but I'll give a little bit more. I was raised right next door over in Iowa, in the farm fields. Well, I tell you what, a young kid with a .22 rifle running around, there wasn't a beer can safe on the road. So I know and understand where you're at and what you're doing. My youngest son graduated from the University of Chicago in biology, only about 4 years ago. He's in med school. He's finished up med school in neurology in Ohio State. So I've been in and out of Chicago when he was here going to the University of Chicago. And I see the University of Chicago is affiliated even with the Kellogg Hospital. Left brain. What I can say is a hard left brain. In those days, 17 years old, war going on the other side of the world. I'm, you're in the Bible Belt. You're, patriots and this. I joined the army. Whoa! You look back and say, what is wrong with you? Something is wrong. So then I get in, okay, I go to West Point. Yeah, and it was my peers who were all the 2 and 3 and 4-star generals that fought the wars the last 20 years. I'd see him on TV and I said, oh my God, that guy, look, he's got no hair. I said, look how plump he is. This guy was a little flacco, skinny guy when I knew him. So from there you come with some fundamentals. Military, Army. I didn't stay in, I did my time, stay in the reserves, did my thing, but I was an engineer. I got into cybersecurity. My core career was in cybersecurity. In the 1970s, in the Army, I was a crypto officer, along with 16 other things. If you're an officer in the Army, if you're a non-commissioned officer, if you're anything in the Army, you're doing 16 things. So I took that career and I passed it into the career I'm in, cybersecurity. So I laugh at all this stuff like the Russians and the collusions. I just roll and laugh on it. I absolutely roll and laugh. The Russians, we were fighting them 45 years ago in the cyber world. Spent 3.5 years in Germany. The Russians were in the vans. They outside. They knew they were. They had cones inside the vans, and they're tapping our things. Every one of our crypto sites, all of our computers, all our stuff, we had copper and lead lined rooms because we knew they were there. So I kind of laugh at all this stuff that goes on today. What did it do? It was all computers. It was all logic. It was all left brain. All left brain. Thinking. What did that do to me? Well, it got turned me into the hardcore atheist. Almost the entire life, the adult life, was atheist. But even though I was over in Iowa, my brother's a preacher, my sister-in-law is a preacher, grandfather's a preacher, a couple of uncles are preachers, a couple of cousins are preachers. I was the rogue. I was the black sheep. I was the hardcore atheist. But not all that time. Not all that time. I shifted. I became a sophomore atheist. And then I slipped on an agnostic because I was hedging my bets. What if the Catholics are right? What if there's a hell and the devil? I will burn in hell forever. So I'm floating around a little bit. You'll see. We'll talk a little bit more about where I sit right now. Being this hardcore left brain, I had a bucket list since I was 20 years old. Now, I didn't call it a bucket list. There's 20 things to do before you die. And it was my checklist. Every year I try to check 1 or 2 things off the list. This is what I'm going to do. I got to do this. I added one just the other day. I thought it was pretty cool. I added a new one to it. So on the bucket list, because I hated to write. I mean, I hated to write. And sometimes it's like self-torture. I put on my bucket list to write a book. It's self-torture. And it sat there on that list for a lot of years. And at one point I got to say, all right, I had a friend, not a friend, it was actually a business associate, was into Kabbalah. And so after about a year and a half or so of being doing business with her, I said, okay, hey, I'm going to venture out and say, hey, what's this Kabbalah? All I know Kabbalah is Madonna. That's all I know, Madonna. She's into the Kabbalah because what is Kabbalah? Now, she's a Latin, a Latina, so what are they? They're all Catholics. They're all Catholic. Well, somehow, how did you end up from Catholicism over to mystic Judaism? I found out what it was. So I got the whole story. Here's what it is, here's what it is, here's what it is. And there's something we call the connection. And I said, hey, what's a connection? It says, you and I have a connection. A connection. What's a connection? It says, you and I lived a past life together. You can imagine the look on my face. Oh, okay. You and I lived a past life together. You mean like reincarnation? Yeah, we did. How do you know? I don't know, but we know. When we met, didn't we just have the instant connection? Yeah. It's kind of a weird sequence of things that we ended up getting connected together? Yeah. Did we instantly trust each other in business? Yes. There was no, emotional, sexual thing. It was just business. But there was a connection. She was right on that point. I said, I don't know. It just is. We just believe it. All right, okay. So I came back, and I said, oh, that's kind of interesting. And he says, so I went to the library, got a couple of books. This is cool. Read some books. Michael Newton. How many of you know Michael Newton? Or of him? I don't know how many of you know him. Any of you study under him? It's interesting. Nobody, but that's okay. Past life regression therapist. He was an atheist. He was a psychologist or psychiatrist, and he essentially did a past life, or he didn't do a past life regression. What he did a hypnotic session on someone who had a problem, trying to take her back to the childhood and find what is this root problem of, I forget what the issue was, or some kind of a phobia, and regress it back. Okay, and the next thing you know, she's 500 years back, and the guy didn't believe it, and so he just kept probing and probing, and he's like me. He just, whoa, I just can't believe this. So I read a bunch of his books. Brian Weiss. I mean, okay, a lot more people than Brian Weiss read his books. Then I could just list them all. Probably 30-some books I got reading, and I got hooked. I joke. I say it's kind of like cocaine. It's like, wow, this is really cool. This is really neat. I was still left brain. I was still way over here. I didn't believe any of it, but I thought it was really neat. I said, oh man, I can write a book. I can write a novel. Time travel using past life regression. And that got me started. That got me started. So I started writing this series of novels. Here's a trilogy. I'm not hawking them, because you can get the ebooks, actually get the ebooks free, except at Amazon. The others are a couple of bucks or something like that. I'm not out to make money on them. I don't care. I didn't find out until later, after I published all 3 books, that they're all messages. And they're all stories. And it's the fundamentals of what I'm talking about today. The first book I did, took me 4 or 5 years to write that first one. Boy, I checked it off my bucket list. I was so happy. I said, wow, that's done. But I had to do the second one. I had to do the third one. The second and the third one, I kind of figured out after a while. And if, for those of you who understand, are there any authors, anybody who's written books, written novels, written stuff? We got something. That's good. Interesting. Self-published? Self-published, you publish? Cool. That's cool. I found out later on, and I kind of figured out along the way, is I didn't write the second and third book. They were dictated. I get in, I call them the binge. I'm in the zone. I'm in the spot. And if you're writers, you got the writers, you're going, man, I'm just cooking, and I got the Dragon Naturally Speaking thing with a headphone, and I'm rattling on, and I'm punching, my fingers are flying on the keyboard, and I said, I gotta put this away. I go away for a couple days, come back. As long as it's time to edit it, I go back and edit and read it and says, geez, this is pretty good. I didn't write this. I don't remember writing this. I don't remember any of this stuff. I just don't remember any of it. So you understand the scope of it. But here's the basic premise of it. The first one is, the basic premise of the first one is, what if, just what if, every religious and philosophical icon throughout history was the same soul? What if? I see some looks. Don't throw no rotten fruit, okay? Just what if? I got the worst, the absolute worst ratings on the first book from the Christians. I expected a reaction from the Muslims. But I actually got the 5-star ratings out of Muslims. Why, I don't know. But I was saying, hey, if they ever show up on my doorstep and some guy goes, oh, Bob, I'm going to take you out, I'm going to say, no, stop. You take me out, I'm taking 36 of your versions on the other side. 36 of them are mine, I'm getting half of your 72. But it didn't happen. Thank goodness. So as I just kind of jump back a little bit, as I kind of made what I kind of call this transformation from this hardcore thinking, I went through a bunch of past life regressions partway through the first book. Because I found that reading all of these non-fictional books, I could write from the therapist position. I couldn't write from the subject, the actual person being regressed. I said, I gotta go do this. So I went, give me a regression. I found a good regressor. I lived in Phoenix then, boom, did the thing. I walk out of that thing. I got all the regressions I had CDs. You know, I got CDs so I could listen to them again. And I'm going home at 3 distinct, crisp lies, boom, 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 crisp as could be. And it was my voice. I don't really remember much, but it was my voice on that tape. I go home, I said, I don't believe it. I took all the research I'd been doing, because it was, if this is, in essence, the fundamentals of the book, the plot was, your past life regression, and you hunt for treasure throughout history. That's it. You're hunting for treasures. That's the basic thing. Because you have access to history through these regressions. I went and took all my research and I threw it in the closet and I walked away. I said, I'm not writing this because I don't believe this stuff. And then a month later, 2 months later, I got to go back. I got to do this again. That's the cocaine thing. Man, I'm hooked now. I got to do it again. Do it again. Do it again. So I was going to go broke. So I said, all right, they got to do it. So got into meditation, self-guided regressions. Man, I'm just tapping it. Now I'm getting it. Okay. Finish the first book. Okay, out it goes. Get to the second one. What happens on the second one? It says, I got to know how to do this. I went back to school, become a certified hypnotherapist, learn how to do it. And there is where I really made my transition into a whole different game. Because suddenly I found myself around all these people I had never been around before. And they're all connected. They're all connected. And it's just almost like I couldn't believe the things that I had seen and experienced while I was in that 2-year period of making this transition. So I kind of did what I called a freak out. Whoa, this is more than I can actually handle. That's how I ended up getting involved in IANDS. As I got in IANDS, I said, oh, I look at the regression side, and I said, well, this is the full death experience, and you have IANDS, which is near-death experience. Because you go there and you come back and you come back. You get into a regression scenario, you don't come back. You go over there, you're sailing around there, and off you go. So you get the full experience. So that's kind of an interesting analogy between IANDS, which is near, go over and come back, and the full from the regression component, the induction, which means you cross in and you're over there. And we'll go into some depth as I dig into the model so you understand. But once I got just in December, I said, okay, the board, I got to step back. I got to go back to what I got to do. This was my core objective. How many of you understand about the core objective of the soul, contracts, things like that? Anybody, you kind of have that sort of a general, okay, yeah, that's good. So you have the general. We're going to go into a little more depth on that. I am putting out a new YouTube channel. There's 3 components to it. One is the Exploring Reality of America. That's gonna really get fired up. But I haven't put it out yet until I get enough videos to the point where I can actually put to YouTube. Second one is Exploring Reality of Life, and the third one is Exploring Reality of Existence, which is the foundations of this talk today. So let's keep rolling. Motivations and assumptions. Current science and research, they're focused on physical phenomena, not metaphysical. And there's distinct historical reasons why. When science and religion split several hundred years ago, the scientists retrenched in, they wouldn't get into anything metaphysical. Yet the churches, they're way over here, they wouldn't get into metaphysical because they had their dogmas to pitch. They had a certain dogma, and that was the line that the religions pitched. So over here, as the science guys wouldn't cross over, because if they crossed over, they'd find themselves being burned at the stake or something to that, because the power was invested in the Catholic Church for the most part, or the other religions, so the scientific people stayed completely away. Metaphysical kind of got lingered and dwindled in the middle, so I think we're seeing some slow changes here. Typically, I say that we're talking about the really big picture. The Big Bang isn't big enough. When you get into the model, the Big Bang is not nearly big enough. This is way before the Big Bang. This is outside the Big Bang. It's much bigger than that. That's the model that we're going to talk about today. Theory of everything, another concept. You'll see a lot of scientists, I have a theory of everything. They stop at the boundary of the physical. They don't merge into the meta. If you look at their theories, they stop at the physical. There are particles and such, and it applies to everybody, everything, everywhere, all time, all space, ETs, us, everything. Because there is what? There's one reality. We really need to invest a lot more money as a human society in this metaphysical space. It absolutely drives me nuts to watch the CERN, the collider in Switzerland. Yeah, how many people know about the Hadron Collider? Okay, what, hundreds of billions of dollars in the last 40 years on it? And what did they get? What's the potential result from bashing particles together deep in tunnels under the Swiss mountains? You get weapons. You get weapons out of it. It's about what you're going to get. A lot of people are scared about the black holes that might come out. But I look and say, well, they got, the big Higgs boson protocol. We're going to find it. And ding, ding, bells went off, confetti, fireworks, everybody got Nobel Peace Prizes. And then 40 years later, somebody says, I found the particle. Bing, ding, ding, fireworks, everything went off. Nobel Peace Prizes for everyone. And then about 2 years later, well, we don't think we found the Higgs boson particle. Nobody got Nobel Peace Prizes for that. They're already given out. But I look at the hundreds of billions of dollars that are spent on that thing in the last probably 30, 40 years. And practically zero gets spent in the metaphysical world. How many of you know Nikola Tesla? He's one of my favorite guys in history. And what did he say? This quote is attributed to him. The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all of the previous centuries of existence. And I absolutely believe this. And there's some reasons. As we dig into the model, you're going to see why. I think you'll see why. And that really gets it. That's in my third book. That's the third book, which is tapping that knowledge base that's out there. Okay, why current science approach is not going to work? It's because they don't look beyond observation. If they can't see it, if they can't sense it, if they can't measure it, then it's just not there. It's a non-physical phenomenon. You'll see this kind of a rough layout as we go through the model. Target audiences that I'm targeting to embrace, and I think all of us as a society needs to embrace. You got red ones and you got green ones. Red ones, don't go there. Don't spend the time. Don't spend that. Where is it at? Scientists, the material scientists, it isn't worth spending the time there to try to convince them of what reality is. But if you got quantums and metaphysics, hey, you're okay. You can work there. They understand it. Quantum guys get it. If they accept it. I remember studying in college the quantum physics. Boy, I had a hard time with that. That stuff was so far beyond me, I just couldn't get it. Because I was very physical. I had to be able to see and feel and touch it. But it's so far. And when they get it, now they're able to test certain things. It's good. Atheists, hardcore pseudo-skeptics, don't go there. Skeptics, there's an opportunity. Definitional. I am a definitional atheist. I'm a definitional atheist. What does that really mean? And I don't mean to dig into it. You have to look at the definition of the word atheist. You have to look at the definition of the word God. Because the atheist is in essence, that you believe that there is, or you believe there is not, the existence of an omnipotent entity. That's the fundamentals. It depends. You get 5 different dictionaries, you get 5 different definitions. But it's about the existence of an omnipotent entity. A God entity. And you look at the definition of God, it's about being an entity. It's all-inclusive and all this and all the such. If you look at the definitions, I'm still in that category. If one were to say the definition of God is not an entity, that a God is the collection, aggregate collection of all energy, all knowledge, all information of all of us, the word is quite often used as spirit, I buy that piece, then I wouldn't fall into this category. But look at the Sistine Chapel, and it's a finger coming down, that's an entity. All to do with the definition. So definitional, I fall in this category. We'll dig a little bit deeper as we go into it at the definitional level. But realistically, I don't care what anybody else believes. Hopefully you'll accept whatever I believe. But anybody can believe anything they want based upon their own belief systems. The dogmas. When we took the dogmas, dogma carries a negative connotation, but it's really a belief system. So it's not necessarily negative. But when you know the religion, I kind of call them holiday participants, true believers, fundamentalists. You got to kind of stay away because the fundamentalists are hard to. Anything outside of their box, they're not going to look at reality. They will not look at reality. So the spiritualists, hey, cool. That's it. Medical doctors, probably, I don't know, my son is probably somewhere up in the red district. I don't know. It's kind of funny because my wife is the same way as him. You know, they look at each other when I'm around. If I venture anything into this area, anything in this area, they get the looks between him and my son, the doctor's son, goes like this. There's my wife. My wife has never read my books. She started reading the first book, and she says, I'm not into this. Close it and push it back. How many of you have that in your life? You run across people in your own personal life that just kind of like, oh God, here he goes again. That's reality. That's reality we have to deal with. Medical, I tell you who's really probably good is the open doctors, caretakers, the psych field. They get it. The caretakers get it. The nurses, the hospice workers, they get it because they see it every day. What do they see? They see death. They see near death. They see people in dire need. They see people going through these difficult times. They see it and they understand it. They may not fully understand the roots, but they get it. Educators, there's the pseudo-skeptics, and then there's the skeptics, the same thing. It's all, whether it's too hard to the left brain or the right brain, there's a lot of things in there. So it's about who do we talk to and who do we talk to and who do we not. All right, a few rules before I dive into the model, because we're about to go into the model itself. A few things that I try not to do is use the word dimensions or universes, because these are primarily physical references. You know, I see both the spiritual side and I see the science side talking about dimensions, dimensions, dimensions. I don't like to use that word. Why? What's the first dimension? A dot. What's the second dimension? A line, a piece of paper, a picture. Third dimension. That's us. We're third dimension. Thing, objects. Fourth dimension, they say it's time. Fifth, oh, we're building up. We keep building up, building up. What is that? It's physical. You're building up from a dot to wherever you're gone in physical. That implies the world is built upon physical matter. I'm saying, I'm not going there. I'm not going to use a word. Because it's too hard to break out of that paradigm of physical. This is way beyond physical. This is Tesla's. We got to get non-physical here. Universes is the same category. I don't like to use the universes. We can talk a little bit more. I use the term STE. How many of you have heard, understand kind of the term STE? Yeah, about half. Typically, it's coined by Dr. Yvonne Kaysen, Canadian doctor, several years ago, as a spiritually transformative experience. I'll use STE, will not use spiritually transformative experience. I use significant transformative events. Why? 2/3 of the audiences that I'm trying to talk to about what is the model of reality, if you say, oh, we're having a spiritual experience. Oh, there goes the eyes. But if you say, hey, there was a significant event in this person's life, scared the crap out of them, and something happened, and they transformed. Something happened to that individual. So I'll focus on the word significant events, not spiritual experiences, simply because there's the audiences that we want to target to get in sync with what is the model of reality. What is that one single model? And we've got to be careful with our words. I try not to use the term love. How many of you are near-death experiencers? How many of you, okay? How many of you have had something like a near-death experience or say an STE type? There, that's filling in the gap. How many of you meditate a lot? How many of you get it? How many of you would class yourself as having mediumship type capabilities? Wow. Oh, I'm going to have some fun with you guys. How many of you feel that you've got sort of psychic type abilities, that you can connect? Wow. This is cool. What a group. We're going to have some fun. I try not to use the word love. And I thought it was just me. I try, because the engineers come back and the first thing to do is, oh my God, the whole realm, everything there is love, 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 love. all of the experience. I feel love, love, love. I say, if I'm going to go to a scientist, a nuclear scientist, and talk to him and say, I got to talk about this, and I say, you know what's over there? It's love. Love, love, love. We're going to use some Beatles here. We're going to use some Beatles. So what I begin to use the word compassion. Compassion is bigger than love. It's bigger. And I think the reason people use love, it got picked up as a term that was coined for these experiences in this other realm. Because it's so big. The feelings are so good and so compassionate. They don't know how to describe it. I thought it was me. And then Mary Neal was at the big IANDS conference, and she said the same thing. She says, I don't want to use love anymore because it's not big enough. And she used the word compassion and empathy and to describe it, which is so much bigger than love. And I think using that word, the compassion and feeling, I'll be able to go to a quantum physicist and say to the quantum physicist, who understands what they call quantum entanglement, which means we're all one, we are all one, that's what it means, and say, there is such an emotional feeling of compassion in that other realm because we're all quantumly entangled. We are all one. That's the word that I'm focusing on, just so you understand my rules. So if you say, why doesn't he talk about this? Because I'm looking at things from a little bit different. Okay, your challenge. I don't want you to believe this model. I don't want you to believe it. I want you to look at it. We'll talk about it. You're only going to get a snippet at the upper layer. And over time, I'll refine this, put out more data behind it, so that you can understand it. But I want you to find the faults. I want you to look at disconnects and say, that doesn't make any sense. I've read all that stuff. I've seen all this. I've experienced all this. And if your model doesn't make sense, okay, I'm good with that. But what I want you to do is build your own model. I want you to think about it and say, that doesn't make much sense to me. This makes more sense over here. And explain why. But don't critique my model unless you bring forth your alternative to that. Say, this piece of your model is lousy. It just doesn't make any sense, blah, blah, blah. Don't say that. You say, comma, but I have this data here that shows that this is what reality is. So my challenge to you is to help build a model. Why? Because we want to refine it. If we aggregate and we put enough models together, physical, metaphysical, science, we can develop research and testing technologies to validate or disprove those components so that we can understand reality a little bit better. All right, you ready? Piece by piece? Okay, real high level scope. There's the other realm, and we're going to dig in when we go slicing it down. And there's the physical realm. Well, we're over here, we're out there in this big blue bubble all the time. We are an energy entity, an energy-based entity. You call it soul. I like to use the word soul. I think we can sell the word soul. We're out there all the time. We manifest in this physical realm only during our incarnations. What's an incarnation? We come in and we live here in a physical entity, a physical body. You'll see I use the word carbon suit. We're in the carbon suit. But we're in there during that time. Over here, I don't like to use the word dimensions. I mentioned that. It's too physical in nature, too materialistic in nature. But there's lots and lots of names for this thing. You know, whether it be end ears, it's home. How many end ears have said, that's home. I went home. And then I came back to this body. This body hurts too much. I went home. Happy hunting ground for the indigenous, typically indigenous North American tribes. Nirvana, heaven, you name it. You name it. There's words in every dogma, in every culture that relate to what this other place is. Let's keep rolling. Energy information. And you're going to hear this. This is my computer stuff coming out. Because, you know, after 45 years in the information business, this is information energy passes a veil. How many of you have heard about the veil? Because we're going to try to dig into, everybody's heard about the veil. The veil could be a filter, psychic firewall, the human subconscious blocker, a transformer. There's things that happen in this layer. And I believe that there are multiple planes to the layer. This goes back to my computer stuff. How many of you are in the technology space? Oh, okay, we got some technology people. The great part of mine is cybersecurity. What do you do? Networks, firewalls, all kinds of layers of all kinds of stuff to protect things on other sides. So typically, what does that veil do? It protects this down here, this physical layer, from the information that's up above. That's what they say. Well, the veil, you're a near-death experiencer, you've pierced the veil. You've cracked the veil, the near-death experiencer. That's why they get more information. They get more information from the other side. Let's see. This is an interesting slide. I'm going to walk through this a little bit so you kind of understand some of the bases of the foundations of the model. Communication processes. We're back to computers again. There's communication processes. Below here is this physical realm. And these entities are manifested. I've got something later on talking about manifestations, because the scientists are coming up with these things. We live in a matrix. We are a hologram. And they have distinct scientific reasons why they make those conjectures. That's why they say manifest. And it's superimposed with these energy entities, our souls. We're superimposed on them. More slides about attachments and how we do this sort of thing. Let's take this little slide over here with the man and the dog. You see, I just happened to put them, they're digital. Over here, they're digital. Why? Hey, they're in the matrix, if that's the right way to look at it. Over there, it's real. And down here, you're talking to your dog, you've got to connect. How many people got pets that you feel like there is a massive connection between you and that pet? And when you look at that dog, and that dog looks at you, and you say, I'm with you. Or cats, it's just, we're hooked together. Did you ever get that feeling that there's something deeper than just you looking at the animal, or they're looking at you? To me, there's communication cycles taking place. And that connection is not in this realm. That connection sails back through the veil, and the interconnection, the interaction is taking place in a different, in the other realm. It's taking place over there, not here. The deeper we go into the model, you're going to start to see. You'll start to see that I think the vast majority of interactions and things that take place don't take place down here. They don't take place in this physical realm. They're taking place in the other realm. All right? Now, as we kind of come across, there's energy entities on the other side. And I look at them and say, we got birds, we got trees, we got plants, we got ants. Some people are speculating there's energy, and I'm having a lot of trouble with rocks. I'm really having trouble with rocks. Do they have an energy in it? Do they not? My position in my sort of theory is they don't. And I think it has something to do with carbon. I don't know. We got to put some money into this to do some experiments to understand. Does a rock have a soul? I don't think so. There's no carbon in there. And all these other things have carbons. All the other, and at least on this particular planet, is carbon-based. I think. I'm not sure. Now, I'm going to slide down here to this far side. We're talking a little bit about that soul that's in there. Because typically when you say, oh, I got a soul. Energy entity is a soul. You're thinking of the human soul. And for those of you that do your deep meditation and you connect back, for those of you, we take a break a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll wrap this one up, then we'll take a break. You've got this picture in your mind that somewhere out there is a clear person, a clear soul that's out there. When you get down to the ants, it's the same thing, it's just a different scale. The reason, let me explain a little bit more about where I'm coming, because, I think our indigenous, our ancients, the ancients on this planet are way ahead of us. They're way ahead of us. And why? because they've had the time to look at the world around them and contemplate it. I spent about half my year in Panama. It's great. I tell you what, when you're retired, it's a heck of a lot better than working. So I spent about half my time, got a house in the mountains, right in the jungle, right next to a national park. And nature is everywhere. I mean, I got the monkeys, they're all my place. You got sloths, you got toucans, you got parrots, you got everything. I got a jaguar. Actually, a week ago, I saw the jaguar's nest. It took a guy and we went up to the mountain behind the house, 2 hours hacking through the jungle and saw the jaguar's nest. I've seen it come down. But anyways, so it's all around. And we got something called the cutter ants. Have you heard of the cutter ants? I had a neighbor of mine. He was retired American. I think he was CIA. We all say, this guy's CIA. We know he's CIA. Well, I just work for the State Department. Yeah, come on. The guy's retired CIA. But he passed away about a year ago. And he warned me, if you see a cutter ant on your property, you go find them and you kill them. I'm like, man, that's not a nice thing to do. And I found out real quick. Once I got the house finished, started putting the landscaping in, and the cutter ants moved in, they will destroy everything in less than 12 hours. So I began to observe them before I killed them. The toxic poison. And I felt so bad when I first started to poison them. Like, oh my God, I feel bad. I'm killing hundreds of millions of these cutter ants. But then I began to just sit and watch them. And then I began to think about the model. There's energy in every one of those little things. And they've got intelligence. And they have knowledge. Not to the level that we got, but they got knowledge. You see? And they hatch. When you go to destroy them, and there's like a bazillion, millions of little eggs and stuff, and you say, they're hatching out, and they just instantly know, I'm a soldier, I'm a worker, I'm a cutter, I'm a hauler, I'm a queen. They know. I said, how do they know that stuff? And you begin to think of it. I'm thinking of the indigenous Indians who used to sit out and watch the cutter ants all the time. Oh, you nasty boogers. The more I get to think, these things are ridiculous. When I get into the model deeper, I think you'll start to see how these things are living entities. But most of their stuff takes place over there. Most of their action, most of everything they do is over there. These things, you hundreds of millions of them, and they're operating as one when you watch them. So it's amazing. So we'll go into a little bit more depth when we get deeper into the model. You'll start to see where I believe this thing is going to go. Because all the information, all knowledge, all everything in existence is really over there. Reality, as the NDAers say, the near-death experiencers say, reality is there, not here. So we'll go into that one, going to the bottom. Okay, Diane, we're going to take a break now, I think. Okay, let's keep rolling. I'm going to try to leave time at the end, maybe about 20 minutes. Just for question and answer, so we can kind of open up, and then I'll hang around afterwards. That we can just sit and chat if you want to talk about some weird, freaky stuff. Okay, so some of this I'll get going through. I want to make sure I leave enough time at the end to do some of the slides towards the end. The energy entity. Now, there's a lot of talk and a lot of discussion around this. There's a lot of probing around this. Some people call it the biofield. I kind of like that word. The biofield, when it's in the physical realm. When it's not in the physical realm, it's the same energy that's there, but I wouldn't call it the biofield. It's something else. All right, but you might also call it chi, prana, orgone. They call it subtle energy. When I was studying for the 2 years, there's a giant book called Subtle Energy. Anybody seen that book in your studies of it? It's really good. It's intense stuff about the same energy. Russians, all of their research is what they call torsion, auras, halos, biophotons. We're going to talk about some other research that's being done around photons, because there's a lot of the communications, because if you remember that lower left-hand side of that other slide was around communications. Communications is a huge part of reality. A huge part of it. some of us did communications when we were in the Army. 34 Sigma Battalion, 72nd Sigma Battalion, 102nd Sigma Battalion. So we understand communication. Yes, ma'am?
Do you use electromagnetic field at all? How do you feel about that term?
No, I don't. The question was, do I really look and see around the electromagnetic field? Because it's in a different realm. And we'll talk about this realm and that realm, the separation. The laws of this realm do not apply in the other realm. It's a different set of laws, a different set of rules. We don't know what they are because we're not studying it. We're not over there. It's a totally different game in that other realm than this realm. Electromagnetism is in this realm. So all right, I'll talk about this. I've got a few more slides that go into a little bit more depth on that. The research I've done in the past, and I haven't even integrated them because there's so much information out there as you begin to dig into this. We just really don't know how it all works. There's different kinds of photography, the Curlian photography. Some people, the skeptics, are just like, this is all smoke and mirrors. I think there's something to it. Some of the photography, you say, well, there's kind of two aspects of it. What's observable? You look down here, this is a photograph of somebody who had their arm chopped off. You know, accident, had their arm. But that energy's still there. And you heard the term of the phantom limbs? Somebody cuts their leg off and 5 years later it still hurts like they stubbed their toe. Fingers, the thing, they just got. But then when they take the photographs, the energy from that entity is still there. So from a research standpoint, medically, psychologically, if we could understand that and if we could connect with the individual, could we not convince that soul, hey look, you don't have an arm anymore. Pull your energy back in and the phantom pain goes away. Could we not help somebody with that? That's possible. I mean, maybe it's something as simple as hypnotherapy. It could, as a technique, could help them. You cut the tip of a leaf off and the energy is still there where the leaf used to exist. The energy's there, even though you cut the leaf off. So the leaf still thinks, if you want to call it thinks. It's still got a leaf out there. So it's some interesting phenomena here. There's some good reading. I just threw this in there. Some really kind of interesting reading about this guy named Claude Swanson. You read some of his books. It's kind of interesting stuff to dig into it. I ran into a person in, must have been September, with a company out in California called SciTech. They're developing this bioenergy research healing techniques. Of course, they're a company. Of course, they're trying to make money. Of course, they're doing things which are much more, I would call them physical in nature, but they're doing some interesting kinds of research in some of the things that they're doing around this biofield. So there is some poking and probing into the biofield, the energy thing, as it sits in the physical realm. We're not really doing any research with that same entity, the energy entity that's in that other realm. We could use a couple of $1 billion for something like that, let's say. All right, this one's going to get busy. I'm going to spend a little bit of time here. You say, what is the model, input, and data? If you were to say all these boxes in here, has got research behind it. Studies, science, a lot of universities doing work in there. I'll go through some of them just so you understand some of the foundation. We can't, in an hour I can't go through this. But what I'm going to do is, we talked a little bit down here on the lower left, and I'm going to make a quick sweep around. The Curlian type photos, phantom lens, well, we talked a little bit about that in the previous slide, then we talked energy. Near-death experiencers, that's what your organization is. STEs. Tens of thousands, if not millions of near-death experiencers that are out there. And I really think of it and I say, if the studies are correct, that somewhere between 10 and 15, maybe 12% of our human existence, of our humans on the planet, have had some form of NESD. They've had some form of it. Yet so few people will talk about it. So few people are willing to come forward. A lot of it's because of the social chastisement of, oh my God, I see ghosts, oh my God, oh this or this. Okay, let me stop at this point. I'm not a near-death experiencer. I had some close calls. If there was going to be an ND, probably would have been in those, you know, anaphylactic shock, and you know, I got my head bashed in when I was a kid, and all kinds of stuff. But I never had the experience, never had the whole thing. But I was handed a bit of a gift with my mother about 5 to 6 years ago. I got to experience her ND firsthand, and she got the full Monty. She was 87 years old now, 90-something now, 92 and a half now. She got the full Monty. I mean everything. Full veridical perception. Really, anybody not really understand the vertical perception? That's a key component. Okay, there's some of you don't really understand it. If I'll explain my mother's, and then you'll get it. You'll get it. Vertical perception means that you understand that the person that has died or is dying or is dead has left the body. Elvis has left the building. The soul, the energy has left the body, is somewhere else. That is a huge critical component of understanding the particular model of reality, because there's an energy entity and it ain't in that body no more. This takes out about half of the physical materialist saying, oh, it didn't exist. Thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of proven cases of vertical perception. Let me give you my mother's. She lives in Florida with my sister. I live in Arizona. Sister called and said, oh my God, she had a gallbladder infection, had emergency surgery today, had to take her in with an ambulance, and they yanked that thing out. Everything's cool, but you need to come help me. Bam, I'm on the plane. I run over all the way to Florida. I rented a car, drove down to the southern part of Florida, rode with my sister, said, let's go to the hospital right now. Says, she doing good? Yeah, she's doing fantastic. Says, but we have to go right now. Okay, I mean, like, can I, like, go to the bathroom? Can I, like, drop my bag off? We're going to go right now. My sister doesn't believe in any of this stuff. She's on the fringe. Even though she's a nurse for 35 years, she's seen it, she's experienced it, but she's not one of these. She's not an eye roller, but she's not, I don't know, somewhere in there. I see it, I understand it, I accept it. She says, we got to go now. We walk in the hospital room, my mother was doing great, and she was dying right at that moment. At that moment. I'm talking about she's standing next to the bed, doing this. Oh, we push her into the chair, get her down, and we buzz the nurse, because my sister's been a nurse, so she understood everything that's going on in that hospital. My mother was a candy striper, octogenarian candy striper, for 10 years in that hospital. So everybody in the hospital knew her. So they coded her. She was going down. My sister said, "Oh, she is in bad shape." What happened? She had I guess called sepsis, instantaneous, boom, total infection, just ripped her apart. So they coded her. There's like 10 or 12 people in the room doing their thing. Bam, bam. They threw us out in the hallway, and then we went down the end of the hallway. I mean, way down the end of the hallway. So long story short, they saved her. They pulled her back, did her whole thing, but everybody in the hospital knew that she was going because she was one of their candy stripers for 10 years. So everybody was coming down to see my sister, who also worked there. Anyways, we go home. 4 days later, sitting at the kitchen table, my mother goes, I don't know how I can say this, but I saw your grandmother in the hospital. So my grandmother died 26 years earlier. And I knew right then, I knew what happened. That was number one. Ding, ding, ding. I could just check right off. The Bruce Grayson scale. Everybody understand the Bruce Grayson scale? You can look it up. Researcher, University of University of Virginia. And it's how you score a near-death experience. That's how you score a near-death experience. Check, 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 check. She started checking them off the list. Oh my God, she got the full money. So she was on the thing, and she says, and by the way, she says, my sister, she looks right and she says, I didn't die, did I? No. What? I said, what do you mean? I heard you. What do you mean you heard him? I heard what you were saying to him, and I heard what you said back to her. You think you guys know what's going on? I know what's going on. She's 87 years old. Says, I didn't die in this. And then you said this, and you said that. And my sister and I are looking at each other. She puppeted our conversation word for word for word. 10 people around her, coded her out, they're doing all their magic. 2 curtains, the big wooden door, and we're 20, 25 meters down the hallway. And he says, oh, by the way, how's Dr. such and such? My sister says, what do you mean? So I saw you talking to him. And nurses, and this other nurse, and this other person, and this other person. So I saw you. And we're like, whoa, okay. That's the veridical perception. So for those who don't understand, that is proof she was not in that body. She was out. And for those of you who read the books about the sneakers, the red sneakers, this was like the super blue sneaker. For those of you who have read those books. So that's a vertical perception. There's tens of thousands of cases and of not just the vertical perception, but all of the other gamuts that come with it. And all the fantastic, amazing, wonderful after effects. I think many of the near-death experiences call them, they don't call them gifts. I call them gifts. They call them the plague. They call it evil. This is terrible stuff because I see what's going to happen next week. My mother got you. She can sit there. Her precognitive ability is about 3 days out. She sees stuff, and then it happens 3 days later, about. So the near-death experiences, they're connected. They're wired up because they broke the veil. And that firewall in the center, they cracked the veil. And we'll go into more depth on that. Because there's layers and layers of filters in that connection between the physical realm and the other realm. And the near-death experiences essentially pierced the veil. They broke the veil. They cracked the veil. And that's why I think so many of we call them the mediums, the psychics, the ones that are real and really have that capability, a lot of them have had near-death experiences because that gave them the ability to crack a hole in that firewall. And for those of you who's been in the network and IT area, the hackers put a back door into the other realm. Hospice, end of life, deathbed visions. And you know what? I read about them. I've studied and studied and studied, and I've talked to all these people about them, and I said, man, this is really cool, really cool. Nothing is cool until you see it yourself. Then it's total validation. But you have to not block things out. Give you an example of another experience that I saw in this area of deathbed visions. Got a brother-in-law's brother gets pancreatic cancer, University of California, San Francisco. He's on his leg, boy. They're pumping everything in there, every experimental thing, trying to save this guy. Guy's in a coma. He's about the size of a twig in the bed, coma, whole thing. And if you study about the deathbed incidences, things that happen at the deathbed, it's amazing and magic. I would call it so many of these experiences that happen at the deathbed, it's just a whole sequence of near-death experiences because, man, you are in and out, in and out, in and out of the other realm. You're picking stuff up and you're coming back. So here's the brother of my brother-in-law. Of course, the brother-in-law is there because this is the end of the line for his only brother. He's there with him, they're in that thing, he's been in a coma, comes out of the coma, he goes, "Where's my horse?" He says, "What?" Now you gotta understand, my wife's Chinese, they're Chinese, and they were raised in Taipei in the center of the town. There ain't no horses in the center of Taipei. He never had no horse. "Where's my horse? I gotta ride my horse." And then he said, "Oh, I love that horse. He was so good." He was talking about his horse. And then all of a sudden he goes, "Ah!" He looks at his hand. He says, "It's white. How come my skin's not dark?" And so this is the last things he was experiencing. What was it? I'm guessing, speculation. He's tapped the memory that's out there. And in a moment, we're going to start looking at where is memory stored. It's in the other realm. He tapped that memory. He picked up a past life where he was either in Africa, Arabia, or some other place, and he was a horseman, and he had a horse, and he loved that horse, and he had dark skin, and he's like, "Oh my God, oh wait, I gotta ride my horse." Boom, bam, gone. When you see that firsthand, it begins to say, the deathbed vision. All these people that write these books and they write the stories, you can see them on YouTube. It starts to come home and say, it makes sense. Now I understand it. Now I understand it. Okay, University of Virginia, Dr. Ian Stevenson. How many of you know Dr. Ian Stevenson? Quite a few, quite a few. You met him. Well, I tell you what, about 2 months ago, I found one of his earlier books on eBay. Man, boom, bid on that baby. I got that book off eBay. One of his 72 cases, proven reincarnation. To me, reincarnation is another key component of it. Because if reincarnation is true, if it's true, that means that we have some kind of soul entity that doesn't reside in this body and die with the body. It is existent before, during, and after we live in our carbon suits. It goes back and it comes back, and it goes back and it comes back, it goes back and it comes back. So there are thousands and thousands of cases. I call them proven. This is why I differ as a metaphysical theorist from a metaphysical scientist, because the scientists can't say, that's proven. Drives me crazy with the scientists say, well, there's a high probability that this is kind of problem in the case of this and return. No, it's proven. I can say that. It's proven. These are cases of reincarnation that are proven. And if you read them in University of Virginia, you understand a little bit of the foundation behind it. There was, I think they hid it for a long time. University of Virginia hid it for a long time. It was one of the founders of Xerox. Took lots of money and put it into an endowment, into a trust fund, but you have to study reincarnation. I want to know what happens when I die, and do I get to come back? So that money is, University of Virginia has been riding on that money for about 40 years. And I think lots of other donors have probably come in and said, I want to know. There was a good TV series about 3 years ago called Proof. You see that? Anybody else see that TV show Proof? It was on one of the TV shows. It was about 10 or 11 episodes. It was about a guy who had lots and lots of money and wanted to know what happens when I die. And he put him into this foundation, the hospital. They built a whole wing in a hospital. Got this woman who had a near-death experience. Came back, and then her son died, and then there was all kinds of stuff in the story. I was really disappointed when they ended the season. I wanted to see, they set it up for the season 2. Oh my gosh, I wish they would have kept it going.
Don't worry, it'll come back.
You think it'll come back? It will reincarnate in the next century. Now, the interesting thing about these proven cases, most of those cases were in children. I'll talk about it a little bit later, about when and how, my perception in the model, how the soul attaches and what the soul attaches to the physical body. Because in the cases of children, you'll see that there's a line around 5 or 6 years old, the wall gets real thick. That firewall gets real thick. So as adults, we can't get through it. Because our firewalls are god darn thick. As a child, it's suave, it's soft, it's spongible, easily wrapped through. So when they talk to people who have passed, we in the West have a tendency to discard them. So where did University of Virginia spend most of their time? Where do you think they spent most of their time doing their research on reincarnation? On children in India. Why? They did their entire cultural basis accepts reincarnation. So they don't take a child who says, oh, my name is not this, my name is that, and you're not my mother anyway. My mother is this, and she lives in that town over there. They accept it, it's part of the culture. So that's why the University of Virginia focused their research in that part of the world that was willing to accept it. Because in the West, as soon as now, you're not talking, you don't have any little friends. There's no little friends. You're not talking to them. I ran into some really interesting ones when I was doing hypnotherapy, as I was practicing. Because I never practiced as a paying practice. I only did it, everything I did was gratis to help people. That was just my game. And I ran into some really interesting ones around there, around people who had involvements with their children. And how they did. Their children are so open. So, but that wall hardens up when they're somewhere between 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. It hardens up. Okay. Child prodigies. When we get into the design, next couple slides, you're going to see some designs about child prodigies. When a 3-year-old sits down, plays Mozart on the piano, where in the heck did that come from? Now, of course, all the skeptics, they got all the reasons. Well, it's just they happen to be a very talented child, and they had to watch this, and they picked it up from here. I don't think so. When you look at the design of the model in a moment, they're picking it up from somewhere else. Now, you could say it's a past life. Oh, in the past life, they were Mozart or a Mozart student. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they're just picking up the knowledge and information from the other side. We don't know. We're not doing any research on it. But to me, child prodigies are key to it. I put a lot of that in my first novel with our child prodigies. That's the whole thing there. It's cool. Shared death experiences. There's actually some folks who are doing experimentation with shared death experiences with families. People who are in hospice, they're at the end, at the very end of the line, they'll bring family members in, or a family member, work with them to try to bond with the person and or their soul. So when that person transitions, they're able to mentally, psychologically, deep inside their brain, connect with them and share the experience with them. Many of the experiences that are documented are spontaneous, which means they just happen. People, they share the experience. They share the whole thing. Let's see. It is Jeff Olson. Have you had Jeff Olson here? Well, you had Jeff. If you were here for Jeff Olson's and Dr. Jeff Driscoll, well, he did come with it, but that was before he got connected. That was Jeff Olson had a near-death experience. He had a surgeon when he was trying to put his body back together. Jeff Olson's his daughter, or his wife was killed, a son was killed, one son survived. He survived, but was just body was shattered. The surgeon's putting him back together and has this shared experience. As the surgeon trying to put that guy's body back together, and the nurse that was in him had a portion of this experience with his wife, who had passed in the accident. So there are spontaneous, many spontaneous type experiences like this. But there are some folks out there who are beginning to experiment with if one family can come in and share the experience of the death, and they can relay that to the rest of the family. Will the rest of the family understand that the transition was good, the transition was nice, and they're much happier out of this carbon soup? Because how many of you had past life regressions? Oh, wow, okay, a whole bunch. When you died, did whether you did it in a meditative state or in a therapist state, did you actually pass out of the body altogether? Yeah? What was it like when you transitioned out of that body? It was, everyone I experienced, it was like, the words that come across my mind is, thank God I'm out of that thing. Man, that's hurt. Particularly if you'd experienced a regression where you were a really old person, and my God, that body just hurts. You transition, it was like, whoa.
Major relief.
Major relief. So it's about the detachment, and we're going to get that in a minute about the detachment from the body. But shared death experiences are a really key point. Quantum physics. Do we have any physics or science kind of folks? We got a few. Quantum physics, the double slit experiment. What do you think the basic double slit experiment is? This is science, proven stuff. Basically means if it's a sort of a cross between the other realm and this realm. I see it as consciousness and the physical realm that we're in. And science has basically proven that if you don't think about it, if you don't have consciousness of an event, it doesn't physically occur. The particle is not there unless you're thinking about the particle. It doesn't manifest. That's what science. It gets deep. Believe me, I studied this thing 40 years ago when I was young, and it was so I don't get it. I just don't get it. So it's some deep stuff, but it basically says, if we don't have consciousness, we don't have physical matter. This is when science, or now they're getting to the thing is, quantum physics, you're trying to say that we live in some of them say we live in a hologram. that this is not real. It feels real. It feels real. You think it's real. But they're saying maybe it's just a matrix. They say, oh, we live in a computer simulation, something like that. But this is physics starting to get in swing. Okay? Time and space. You've heard the things on the Michio Kaku. Well, I had trouble with his last name. By Neil deGrasse Tyson. Time and space is non-existent. It's not real. You'll hear that. And I think a lot of the experiences, the near-death experiences come back and say the same thing. They're in line with these astrophysicists who say that time and space is not real. I would agree. We'll dig into this a little bit deeper. Spontaneous healing. Boy, have you had Anita Morzani? Did she come in the past?
No,
oh,
she's been going to.
That one, that's probably the or Eben Alexander. I know I'm sure Eben's been here. I saw it with my mother. My sister and I were read. This is what I was talking about. When you see it yourself, when you're cognizant enough to acknowledge things around you, you say, it makes sense. Watch my mother in her near-death experience. My sister and I were ready to put her out to pasture. We were ready to get one of these motor wheel cars, put her in, have somebody full-time health care because she was having so much trouble with her back and her legs. That's that old body syndrome. You know, it just hurts so much. She had her near-death experience. And I was over in Florida. I mentioned that for several weeks, helping out. I go back to Phoenix. My sister texts me over and says, "My God, this woman is killing me." I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "We went out shopping today." And they're saying we were ready to put her in a permanent wheelchair, bed her down, before the near-death experience. My sister said, we went out shopping today for 8 hours. I can't keep up with this woman. And 2 weeks later, we went out for 11 hours today. Oh, so I would sense that as the spontaneous healing component of the near-death experience. But it's not, there's all kinds of other healing you can have. When then we're going to go into the healers. You talk about healers. Is it real? Is it not real? I think there's something to it, I would say. But that's what I would call empirical data. We have empirical data. We cannot ignore empirical data. That's my left brain thought. Zen, now this is another one of those words. We might lose this. Battery. I'm not a battery.
There's another battery in the
right.
camera case.
In the camera case? This one? All right. Here, I'll get Patrick, if you could plug that in, and I'll try to stay by the... All right. I'll try to stay by the... Xenagossi. It's another one of those words that we have trouble... I have trouble pronouncing. Xenagossi. Anybody heard of it? Anybody ever seen Xenagossi? I've never seen it. Anybody? You've seen it. Is it cool?
Well, no. Physically, I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
I read about it in a book.
Okay. It's what it is that people will spontaneously begin to speak, as they call it tongues. They're talking in tongues. They're talking in foreign languages that they have absolutely no knowledge of. So where's that coming from? To me, that's got to come from some other place. And we'll see it in our next slide or so. So just keep that in mind. They're getting data from somewhere else. They're getting knowledge. They're getting information from somewhere else. Orbs and ghosts, manifestations. There's some slick stuff. I mean, it's slick. I look at the orb stuff, and until I saw it myself, I said, I'm not buying this. I went out with my son one time. We went to Jerome, Arizona. It's kind of like a place where a lot of ghosts are at. It's an old ghost town. We went to, I saw a couple of heads shaking there. There's a place called the Asylum, the old hospital, where all the people were kind of like, you know, experimented or whatever happened at the hospital at this old ghost town. They said lots of ghosts around. So, oh, there we go. Oh, perfect. So, hey, perfect. Thank you. So I took my oldest son. He's not like the younger one. He's older. He works at Disney. He's an Imagineer. So his mind is all right, but he's still got left because he's an engineer. So he's okay. So he and I, we go to Jerome. We stayed the night in the asylum in the old haunted hotel. Oh yeah, I hear you. Yeah, let's go. And we went on the tour. We had the temperature detectors and the cameras, and we had the stuff, man. We looked like the guys on TV. And so, you know, the oldest one said, yeah, we're going to go find ghosts. We saw the little orby things. I said, no, these are just reflections of dust particles. But then I went back. I mean, it was they're just dust particles. I know, because they look like. And then I went back and looked at much of my old photos, and I said, oh my God, look at these old photos. And my 60th birthday party, I'm looking at it and said, holy crap, there's got to be 20 photos there. We had all the kids, everybody's in California, and they all were on Skype. We had laptops laid out, so everybody's there, and we're just having a big birthday party with my cake, and there was all of these orbs all over the what the heck is all that? I never saw it when I had the pictures. And I'm like, whoa, look at all that. And then you go to other pictures, and there's nothing. So you say, well, is it real? No, we need some experimentation with that. We need to do some research. Is it real? Is it not? I don't know. But I'll tell you what, it's pretty cool stuff. We need to do some research. Non-physical communications, active communications. We need ideas on how to do this. I'll explain a little bit about the Soul Phone Project. Have you heard of the Soul Phone Project? University of Arizona, out in Tucson. Ah, okay, it's cool. Gary Schwartz, the doctor, he was after me last year trying to get into the IANDS main conference. I got to speak because we made some breakthroughs in the soul phone. That means a physical technology talking with entities on the other side with technology. You know, that's to do with photons. But it goes back to the same point I said earlier. For years they were working on the thing, didn't make any progress. Suddenly they made a huge leap in progress. Why? Somebody came up with a whole bunch of money and gave it to the psych department in Arizona and said, get that damn cell phone working. I got people to call when I get to the other side. I'm going to get on my kids big time. Technology models, you'll see this in a bit. Technology models and reality models, they mimic each other. And I'm going to keep moving so I get this. And the key point on here is DNA. Most of DNA is junk. They call it junk. DNA, only 3% do they really understand what it is. 97% they don't have any idea what it does. Part of this model is about looking at technology and mimicking, or I said technology mimics reality. The vast majority of the computer, of your cell phone, is what? Is communications. They call it I/O. It's input, output. It's not storage. It's not processing. It's about moving information around. That's a key component of the model that I put together. Alien abductions and things like that. People, oh, do you believe in aliens? Okay. Part of the alien abduction thing, what happens to them? There's some that I'm not aspiring to them, not getting one, okay, they get it, that's fine. But what about the ones that said, I'm in my bed in the middle of the night, and the aliens come through, and there's the light. The light's coming. And they suck me right through the roof into their spaceship. And I look up, and there's the aliens looking at me, looking over me. What happens in an NDE? The event happens, whoo, a light, typically a light of some sort, and you're floating, you're going down the tunnel as if you're floating through. Out-of-body experience. How many of you had an out-of-body experience? It's cool. Is it OBE not cool or what? Oh, the first time I had mine, it was, I went through, I was in the lower floors of a condo, and I went through 15 floors. And I looked at everybody in the floors as I floated. And it was like, whoa, this is cool stuff. It was really cool. So when I see it, I say is an alien type abduction that somebody sees. Could that possibly be an SDE type experience that they're having for whatever reason? And when they look up and they see the aliens with the big eyes, could they not be, in a particular past life, have incarnated on some other planet with these other entities? And when they look up, they're not being abducted, but they're looking up. Because what happens in an NDE, or if you go through an induced regression to a past life. You're looking around, you're seeing other entities of what you saw then. So I'm saying there could potentially be a linkage to this. So I wouldn't discount alien abductions as not being some type of an STE, or not an NDE, but perhaps an STE. Some things to think about. Okay. Some of the foundations and fundamental principles of the model. I'm going to move a little bit faster here. So some folks asked for copies of the slides, so I'm going a little bit faster because some of these slides are not graphic, they're more listed. So I can get you a copy, I'll clean her up a little bit, get you a copy, so if somebody wants them, maybe they can pull off your site or something like that. That'd be just fine. Okay, so I'll talk a little about the physical realm exists only because of consciousness in the other realm. I talked about the double slit experiments. Einstein, you know the famous Einstein guy, he didn't know what it meant. He didn't know, he called it spooky science. He couldn't understand it. All this kind of phenomena we're talking about is spooky science. I mentioned a little bit earlier, the law of physics, the laws in this realm don't apply in the other realm. We don't know because we're not over there. We're not able to run tests, we're not able to run experiments in that other realm. So they don't apply over there. So they say, well, you can't go faster than the speed of light. Well, in this realm, in the physical realm, maybe not, but now they're disproving that. They're finding stuff that does go faster than the speed of light. So even the laws here are not that firm. Concept. We talked about many of these things. We want to talk a little bit about the consciousness. It's the thinking, it's the thought, it's the intelligence, it's information. And what I see in this model, we're going to dig into a bit, is that there's a local consciousness that resides in the living entities, us. There's a local consciousness that lives here, a component of it. But most of the rest of it is in the entity that's in that other realm. It's not in this realm, the way I see it. So that the non-local consciousness is out there in this other realm all the time. And I say it's out there, you know, I keep pointing up because everything points up. You know, so it's kind of like pointing up, but it's the other realm. We don't know. It's all around us. It's a different realm. It's a different thing. And I'd like to make an analogy on this, is that it's like everything is stored in a cloud. You get your iPhone, or you get your cell phone or your laptop, and all the times you get this stuff, and it moves stuff to the cloud. And you don't know where it's at. He said, you don't have it. The other day I got one, it was, I forget which one it was. It must have been the Microsoft says, we're going to move your file. And it was this file. We're going to move your file to our cloud. Are you ready? Whoa! 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 What do you mean? We're going to move this file. I was working on it a couple days ago. We're going to move it to the Microsoft cloud. It was called OneNote because I'm with OneNote. I'm using OneNote. And it's really good. I like it. And it says, we're going to move it up. And after about a couple of days, it says, all right, I'll let him do it. I clicked it. And okay, moving it. But it's in the cloud. And I come back later. I wasn't connected to the internet. And I went to get the file. It says, file not found. No! Damn you! You took my presentation to the cloud, and you're not going to give it to me. The darn firewall stopped me from getting my presentation back from the cloud. So that's the analogy that I talk about the technology. All right? And here's sort of a left-hand side is real technology today. Right-hand side is what I think the model is really about. You get over here, you got cell phones and such. You can use local Bluetooth. They talk back and forth, blah, 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 between machines. And it's gone up to Verizon. It's gone up to AT&T. They're coming back, and they got a data store up there that says, oh, here's your IP address, and here's your thing, and here's your stuff, here's your talker, here's your account, boop, 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 until you get a web 404 error, you can't get your data. That firewall stopped. Let's take the analogy. Two individuals. We're sitting here. We're having a conversation. We're talking back and forth. You and I are bonding. We're having a bond here. And next thing you know, I turn over here, but my mind's still connected because I'm talking to the cloud. And then you're talking to the cloud. And then here's your sister over saying, oh, talk to the cloud. Just got off the phone. Get on the cloud. Okay, I'm going to die now. Soul to soul. I'm going to die now. I'm having a terrible feeling about her. How many times have you heard that story? I knew there was a problem. Or you get, and how, statistically, and there's studies on this statistically, the phone rings, you know who's calling you. You know exactly, because you've got this thing. I think there's a thing that happens from the entity that we are in the physical realm, passes to there. There's a little chit-chat goes on up there. Boom, hey. But we're being filtered out. There's some filtering. You don't get the whole thing. You just get kind of pieces of it. So this is about the communications. We're talking about communication channels between this realm and the other realm. And if I were to venture a guess, a huge amount of the interaction between people is not in this physical realm. It's not here. The greatest amount of it is happening out there. Any of you do have done inductions, hypnotherapy, any hypnotherapists, kind of like, there's some folks in there. You ever do your therapy session with someone and you're doing their thing, and then suddenly you're in the middle of their session? You feel as if you're connected with them?
Connected, but not really.
Yes, she says connected, but not really. You're right. So there's a connection, but not, you're not, but it's kind of hard. You feel like you're in it. I've done the regressions with folks. Next thing I feel like they're saying stuff, because if you do an induction into a past life scenario, they're typically, I know, I got them really good when they're leaning over and they're snoring and they're drooling. You got them good. That's where you want them. And when you do this and they're talking, they're just kind of, oh yeah, I'm this, I'm that, I'm doing this. When suddenly I'm almost ahead of them. It's as if you've somehow connected at this other layer so that you're experiencing what you're experiencing. Similar to what we talked earlier, the shared death experience. It may be the same kind of a thing. But we don't know. There's a lot of things we just don't know. Now, for you techie piece, I know there's several folks in the IT, the technology area, if you understand it. Let's talk about information depositories. Short-term and long-term. Short-term. Left-hand side, again, technology. You got your laptop, you got your stuff over here. Pass through your firewalls, and there's all kinds, believe me, I was in cybersecurity for all these 40-some years. There's firewalls out the kazoo all over the place. And likewise, in this physical realm, ethereal realm, the other realm, there's a lot of blocks and firewalls over there too. I'm convinced of it. On this side, you go to some kind of an infrastructure, you got the World Wide Web, you got the internet over here, and over here you got Google Apps. They got your data. Microsoft's got my presentation in their cloud. That's mine. But they got it. My network's down, I can't get to it. But data goes up, cloud's over here. Data goes over here, I want to get this back down to your machine. Where's most of your data? If you're out surfing the web, where's your stuff that you're looking at? It isn't here. It ain't here. Most of my stuff's out there. It's not here, it's out there. I got a little bit here. You got to have certain things. You got to have indexing. You got to have some base storage. You got to have some basic fundamental stuff. But the vast majority of it is out there. And I think as time goes on, it will get more and more and more so. I think there's a huge analogy to what we're looking at between the physical realm and the other realm. I think most of our information is out there. It's not here. You get a chance, go out and do some surfing on the net and search up on current medical research on where the human brain stores information. And you ain't going to find squat. They don't know. They don't know where or how our brain stores memory. They don't know. Oh, we've got micronodules and nodules, and we've got things with synapses and dendrites and things that we don't know where memory is stored. Yes, ma'am?
Can I say something in regard to what you just said and what you said before?
Okay.
As far as the medical portion, and going back to what you said earlier, the nurses, the good nurses really get it.
Yeah.
I can't hear
Her, okay. She's saying the good nurses get it. I'm with you. She's saying they understand what's happening about this information flow.
You can, and I have just save patients by telling doctors, you know, something's wrong with this kid. And you're looking at a baby boomer nurse here before a lot of these, you know, technologies, and we have saved lives that way.
Yeah, so she's basically saying and it's what I was saying earlier, the nurses see things a lot clearer than others because they're right there. When there's problems, there's issues medically with that person in the physical realm, and they're suddenly, they're skitzing out, they're connecting out, the things are going wrong, they see things and they pick things up. So I'm in sync with
just a feeling that
yeah.
you get like a sixth sense.
It's a sixth, you call it the sixth sense. You're picking things up, because you're probably picking them up from over there. So where are you getting? Now I got a few other slides which are going to hit that a little bit closer. So we'll go on a little bit more. All right, just so I touch on this. I think there's two components in this model. Now, I use the word akashic. Anybody not kind of know what the akashic is? You know Edgar Casey? It's his word. I give him credit for the word. He kind of started using that word. It's like this place where all knowledge, all information, all everything is stored up there. And when Edgar Casey, who's the American prophet, that's the term that was used for him, and I would imagine, you know, the ancient Delphi, the oracles, where are they getting their data? They're in a data from out here called what Casey called the Akashic, but it's the records, everything. Everything's out there. This life's information, this particular person, this life, you got your own store. That's your stuff. But I separated them into two, but they're really probably the same thing. And the key to the whole thing, for you database guys, are there anybody database kind of people, computer database kind of people? Oh, we got a couple. This is indexing. They call it indexing. And where do you store the index at the local level? The index is in a computer world, is the way that you take data and you sort through it and you put them into little codes and stuff that you can get stuff really, really fast. I think in the human, wherever they store this information, the indexes are stored here, but the data is stored out there. So when you get to the point of saying, all right, somebody grew up, went to high school with, hey, you remember that time we went, hey, remember this, remember that? In your head, you're just tapping the index. Boom! You're going, all that stuff that you're recalling, you sit there and you do this, you're just hesitating because yourself is going out there and finding the data. It's not here. I don't think it's here. I think it's out there. I think it's out there. I think near-death experiencers pretty much confirm a lot of that because of the stuff that happens. I don't want to go into details. If you look at the sequences of things that happen and what they say about certain things, the data's out there. Everything they got is out there. Everything that happens around them is out there. And they're picking it up from out there. And they may not be picking it up from themselves. They may be picking it up from somebody else. So it's about the big cloud in the sky and about getting access to data. All right, let's keep going so we don't tie up. Okay. Information repositories. I'll make a quick comment and I'll keep moving on. Anybody familiar with the Heart Math Institute? Look at, okay, wow, a bunch of folks. I've looked at their research, I've read through the research. There's a connection there somehow. I don't know where it's at. I don't know what it is, but there's a connection in there somehow. The physical heart's got something to do with it. It's got something to do with it. So I'm just going to put this on a little bit of a sideline. And why? And you'd have to read their research to really understand there's a connection. Now, some of them might be, I'm going to talk about, I'll mention it in another slide on it, around, it's non-volatile RAM. You computer geeks, non-volatile RAM, what does that mean? It means it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. It's there all the time. So you can go to sleep, you can go into a trance, you can go into coma, but it's there. You can tap that information. And I think maybe that has something to do with it. And it may be down to the basic fundamental life forms of the carbon unit that you're in. You know, it keeps the heart pumping. It keeps the lungs moving. It keeps the basic body functioning, even though you're in a flatline coma. I think there's some fundamental memory stuff that says, it's not stored in the cloud, but it keeps your body, your physical body, functionally viable until your soul decides, I'm going to come back to it, or not, or something else happens. I think there's some fundamental stuff that has something to do with that heart. I don't know. We talked about the left and the left is the thinking brain, the right is the feeling brain. There's some really good YouTube clip out there. Alan Allo's in there. I think it's Discovery Channel, about a guy who had epilepsy so bad, and what they did is they physically severed the two sides of his brain. Surgically severed the two sides of his brain. Really interesting clip to see what happens when that happens. And I think there's a key connection to this thing with the human brain. But I think it goes deeper than that, because those ants that we talked about earlier, you know, we talked about the ants, they don't have the same kind of stuff and brains and things that we do. In our scope, what we're talking about, I think there's some key things here. That memory's resident in the brain just for a second, and then bam, it's routed off. Telecommunications. What? Input, output, boom, sends it off to the cloud. I think that data's in the cloud. Data's not in your brain. I think it holds it temporarily and sends that stuff off. All right, I'm going to keep rolling so we got some good stuff. All right. Just a real quick one to touch on here. Around the storage in the physical realm, in our brains or entities, I mentioned there, I think it's all buffered out to this other realm quickly, right away. It's processed, pieces are kept, indexing, as they call it. Remember I mentioned that word indexing? Kind of happens. You got to know where to go get it. You get on the other side, it's got to know where to pick up that information when it goes to it later. It's kind of like, you got to know the URL, like on your phone or the internet, your browser. You got to know the URL. That's the URL. You store that, so you know where to go to pick it up later on.
It's the address.
It's the address. It's the address, whatever the IP address you got to go to, or the technical address you got to go to. Science is studying these things. They keep saying these microtubules in the cerebral cortex. They don't know. They say, that's memory. That's the human memory. That's where we remember stuff. But they don't know because they can't really validate anything. I'm kind of suspecting it may not be the memory itself, but it may be the interconnectivity. It's kind of like the circuit boards that wire it together to allow the information to flow so they can route it off to the other side. These are kind of techie, computer-type terms, but I think they apply. I mentioned this word, non-volatile, ROM. It keeps you going. It just keeps you going. Now you get over to a non-volatile indexing ROM. It means it's some form of indexing. I talked about the address. You know, ooh, I got the address. I know where to go. Boom, so you can get it real fast. I can recall it real quick. Short-term kind of memory. Longer time kind of memory when you got to do this, when you got to say, yeah, I remember, but oh, then it comes back. It's searching that longer term memory on the other side. And DNA-based IO. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of DNA, science doesn't know what it is. They call it junk DNA. That's what they call junk, because they don't know what it is. But if you look at the technology side of computers and technology in your cell phone, the vast majority of it is input-output. It's about moving information in and out. So that big model is where I'm thinking is a huge component of it, is about getting information in and out. I got to talk about most of these, so I'm going to keep going. So we have a chance to talk about this. All right. Inter and intra-realm communications. I got a few samples. I want to use a bit of a sample here of an intra-realm communications. This is I've got another slide here on spirit attachment. Spirit attaches as they attach to the body, and there realistically are, and we'll see one of the other slides, that there can be multiple spirits attached to the same physical body that we're in. So the Catholics call it exorcism when you want to detach out of the body. When you're into the hypnotherapy side, when you're into the therapeutic side, the psychologist, psychiatrist, it's about detaching that entity, get it out of the way, or flush it from the person so that they can move on with their life. So here's an example. And watch, I actually happen to know the therapist, and I happen to know the client, the client over here. The client had some issues. These significant issues he had for 30 years. The therapist comes in. He had no idea what it was or what it was. It's just there was issues. And so the therapist does their thing, go back, finds out there's an attachment, this other entity's attached. Now, the skeptics are going to say, it's all crap. Oh crap. They made it up. She made it up. See, she made it up, and she was coaching her to make it up, to fabricate it. Now, in her particular case, if it was all fake, that's okay, because it solved all of her problems. But just so you can see about the intercommunication, the inter-realm and intra-realm, they're talking about, this one says, okay, well, this is her soul over here, talking to this soul, and this soul, and finds out that this soul is attached to that body. So there's two souls attached to the same body. Two energy entities attached to the same physical carcass. And what was that one? Well, there was another one, a third party out there, and it so happens that this, I should say, this other third party up here happened to be the soul of her father, who had died 30 years earlier. But it also happened to be the soul of the younger brother, this one over here. And what happened, there was an accident, and the younger brother was chewed up in a farm machine. And the older brother, trying to save the younger brother, because it was his responsibility to take care of the younger brother, chewed up his own leg. Died as an old man, went through the whole life with a total guilt complex about the younger brother. Well, the younger brother reincarnated as the father of this one. When the father died, this soul who was protecting, actually, this soul who was protecting the father said, oh my God, he's gone. So I'm going to attach to her. It's attached to her. So 30-some years later, when she was in her 20s, attached, she never slept a night again. From that day on. Because she woke up in the middle of the night with these massive dreams of some guy with a dark overcoat on with a limp. Says, this is my demon. This is the demon from hell. Kept seeing him for 30 years, never slept a night. Never slept a night. Once they figured this all out, this guy would not go on. He wouldn't detach. So they went through the sequence. They went to the database. Remember the database? They looked up the address. Where's the younger brother now? And brothers, go get the younger brother. And this is all subconsciously, or super consciously, however you want to look at it. Brother grabs him, pulls him back. He comes in and said, hey, why don't you talk to brother? Talk to your brother. Are you okay? Everything's fine. It's cool. Oh, because this guy's stuck in some plane close to the physical realm, wasn't going to the light. Is it near the experience? Didn't go to the light. And I can't tell you how many people I've talked to said the same thing. Therapists that were working with people, they won't go to the light, and they get stuck because there's some driver that keeps them from letting go to go. If they let go, then they can recycle. I call it recycle. That's my word. Recycle. In video game terminology, return to spawn point. They went through this whole process, linked up with him, made him hold hands, and go off to the light. Went off to the light. That night, she slept the first night she did in 30 years. All of the other issues that were, so there were a lot of other issues, because that older brother of the younger soul that had been lost was attached to her. Every time she went to do something that was adventuresome or something with her husband or her kids or something, she'd have an accident, trip and fall, sprain an ankle, fall, just trip, cut her foot, couldn't go do this, couldn't go in the water. And it's just, that was the entity was protecting her. That's the story. So that she wouldn't get hurt. Because that entity had a responsibility to protect the younger brother, which he didn't do in that previous life. So interesting stuff. You can't make this up. I mean, this is, they were making this up. Somebody's getting really good if they made that all up. So you say, is it real or not? I don't know. But when you hear so many cases like this, where it suddenly changes a person totally, you say, maybe there's something behind it. Maybe there's something behind it. I saw a question.
Yeah, is this what some people might refer to as ghosts or souls that haven't returned?
That's it. Exactly. That's what I'm perceiving it, is that the entities, the energy entities that were attached to a body did not fully return to the other realm. They wouldn't go back to the other realm, but for some reason they were bound. You call them ghosts, you call them demons, what do you call them? They're closer to this lower plane, and they won't let go. I'll give you one more example that fits with this one. I want to make sure I keep moving, leave some time. I talked to a fellow at a conference. He was working with a group of others, and you'll understand why they're a little bit quiet. They don't want to talk too much about it. Maybe 100 or so people, North America. And they, in essence, were doing what the Catholic priests do. They do exorcism, they do detachments. I actually took a course when I was in my study program too. I took a course in detachment. Really cool stuff. I mean, it's really interesting. But this guy, they would work with others, but they didn't do it. If you look at this model, in essence what they were doing, they didn't do it. Everything was done meditatively. They did it by connecting to their soul. Not their soul, their guide. Their guide. We'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. I want to make sure I leave some time for it. They talk about the guide. The guide. Everybody's got guides. Everybody who feels like you got a guide? You feel like you met the guide? Are they funny or what?
Sometimes.
They're right. Sometimes. Sometimes they can be real jerks. Yeah, well, I see that happening. Yeah, but they're in essence your guide. There are other entities that are somehow associated with you. They're connected with you. Well, that's what these folks would do. The 100 and some people would work with their guides. Their guides would work with others that had either issues or what they suspected were attachments or something. Is at sometimes they were doing the ghosts, as you mentioned, the ghosts that are attached to places and stuff. And they said, we were just kind of like house cleaners. They kind of called it out. Like, we were trying to clean the earth house, move these guys out of here because they're taking up too much space. And then some of the things that they talked about, the stories after stories of what they came up with, you can't make this stuff up. This is better than Hollywood stuff. I mean, it's really, really cool stuff. I'll come back to that in a little bit when we get to one of our next couple slides. Quantum entanglement. This is a key component. This is really a key component. This is science. And what the scientists said, that everything is connected together. It's all connected together. This is scientists that are saying this. They're saying, if you connect these two electrons, and they're down at the electron level, because they're materials, they're still in the material world. You get this electron, and you flip this electron, the other electron could be on the other side of the universe, and it'll flip. So they're at that level. They're entangled. Because those two particles are entangled, they're tied together. If you extrapolate that up, into this other realm, and everything is quantumly entangled. Everybody knows everything about everybody else, and you're all connected. This is the concepts of, and a lot of it goes into the dogmatic religions of saying, we are all one. You know, we are everything. And then now you're going to go into the gods and saying, God is everything, there's all us, we are everything. Now, because if you're quantumly entangled with everything else, at an energy level, then suddenly we are all one, and we are all entangled. So when someone goes to the other realm in the form of a near-death experience, or some other spiritual experience, or some other significant transformative event, what do they feel when they're in that realm is that total compassion, because they are one with everything else in that realm. So that may be the sort of the translation of that feeling is everything in the other realm is quantumly entangled. When they cross into the physical realm, the firewall kicks in, boom! You cut it out. You don't really understand that you are part of everything else that's around us. But when you go home, when you go to that other realm, it's a whole different game. Global Consciousness Project. This is cool. I got involved with this many years ago. Anybody know what the Global Consciousness Project is? Okay, we got a couple of folks that know about it. Princeton University, been going on for a whole bunch of years, a guy named Dr. Roger Nelson. And there's a bunch of other doctors. Dr. Dean Radin out of the Institute of Noetic Sciences out in California. He just retired from there. They've been working on this project for years. What they've done is they planted, I think it's 65, I think they call it eggs, but they're little things that flip coins. All they do is flip coins. Ones or zeros, ones or zeros. And then through some courses of experimenting over the years, I found out that sometimes these things don't act right. If you flip coins, it should be 50% of the time a 1, 50% of the time a 0. But they found these things would skew. They skew, they change, they can understand. They suspected, what if consciousness, the global consciousness of all of us, were to affect this technology? It's a link between the physical realm and the other realm. So the consciousness is in the other realm, and suddenly it affects the flips on this. Let me just give you, I give you one example. The prime example they got, there's a whole study written on this one, is that what if on 9/11, their count went off the streaming scale. Off the scale. 9/11. Probably the most significant event that ever happened certainly our time. But here's what's interesting. It happened 90 minutes before the first plane hit the tower. You look at two things. The quantum component of global consciousness. Is all consciousness connected? And the second component is time real. You don't know. You didn't really understand. There's more research going on. There's other organizations took a lot of the research over. They've got the data. It's about the correlation, understanding the data, and what you can do with it. Because you got to say, okay, it doesn't prove that time is a relevant thing, because potentially you've got, the people are on the airplanes and whoever's involved in the thing an hour and a half before know that they can't stop it. It's going to happen. Hour and a half before. So they're spiking. Their consciousness is talking to, I should say, interconnected with all other consciousness. Next thing you know, every one of our conscious energy entities in the other realm are talking about, man, there's that really big thing about to happen. It's a very interesting concept to think about, just to think about it. Okay. So if you haven't done anything, it's out there called gcp.org or something. You can find it. Really, really good reading on it. Let's keep going. Etheric planes. I think there's some planes involved in it. When I say planes, layers. There's layers to these different realms that we've got. I'm really grabbing what I call the Schumann plane. The Schumann plane is a resonant cavity around the planet Earth. It vibrates 7.83 hertz. But then I look at every other planet's got a little different frequency. It vibrates a different frequency. Could this possibly be sort of a jump-off point, interconnection point between the two realms? Human brain waves are sitting about, for the thetas, 4 to 7, alphas, 8 to 15. Maybe there's something there. I don't know. We're not going to know unless we start doing some research on it. And it gives the scientists something to grab onto, to try to help see if there's a connection between the other realm and the physical realm. There's a lot of research needs to get done. All right. Bioenergy fields. I'm going to try to leave a little more time, so I'm going to run through these last few slides, but you'll be able to get copies of the slides. I think and this is somebody's question earlier about electromagnetism. I don't think electromagnetism is part of this game. It may be part of it, but not that we're aware of. I think there's something which I would call the life energy field. That's my term. I got fundamental building block. It's like electricity. It's electricity. That's probably my phone. I'll bet you in there. I'm going to take a second because this is starting to drive me mad.
I'm sorry. Look underneath underneath the computer and the podium.
Under the computer down here?
Yeah. There's a little pouch.
Oh, it's not that. Oh, it's the pouch. Here it is. It's vibrating.
Oh, sorry. I turned it off. It didn't pay any attention to what I told it.
I gotta call it electricity. And if you look at electricity, but it's not electricity. It's whatever this life energy force. We don't understand until we start to do some research in this area and dig into it. I kind of say it's analogous to electricity and electrical field, because the electrical fields are on wires when you run electricity through it. Maybe there's something in the electrical field can carry information. Now we start to get into the consciousness field. I align the consciousness field to something like the magnetic field. Not a magnetic field, but something like it. Because then I think it can start to carry information. And if we did enough experimenting, we might be able to figure out how the energy entity we got that's resonant in his body is communicating into that other realm. So there's a lot of research I think needs to be done in this area. There's so much to be done. All right, we talked about time. I'm going to make a comment about this because I think it's kind of important. Time is about processing information. Or about not processing, it's about possessing information. And it not only applies in this realm, it applies in the other realm too. There are so many experiencers say, time is irrelevant over there. Time doesn't exist over there. I believe in the other realm it does exist. There's reasons why. I'll go into this a little bit. But in this realm, the primary rule is that time is sequential. It's second by second by second by second. It's sequential. If you really think about it, if you knew what was going to happen 2 minutes from now, then time's irrelevant. Even though time is sequential, because you're waiting for the next 2 minutes until it happens. But it's information. It's all about having access to information. There's enough studies. If you look at the studies done at the Institute of Noetic Sciences out in California, even the studies on precognition, they have absolutely proven precognition. There's no doubt, meaning that you can foresee the future. But here's an interesting thing. This is why, I talked earlier, having so much trouble with our science understanding what's going on. Medical science, in statistics, if you understand the mathematics of it, 10 to 1, if you have a 10 to 1 probability that this drug fixes this thing, the drug goes to market and everybody gets rich and the stock goes up of Pfizer. 10 to 1. They've proven in the precognition of upwards of 1 billion to 1 probability against odds that this thing was real, and science still won't accept it. Still 10 to 1 for drugs, for metaphysics in this particular area, precognition, ESP, different ones, they run statistical data on it, in the millions to 1, billions to 1. It's high numbers against the odds that it's just a crapshoot that this thing happened. It was still not accepted. So that's my commentary on it. But in short, if you pass up into this other realm and they say it doesn't exist, I think it does exist. And it all exists because of the firewalls or the filters that happen at the storage points. And why I say this, how many of you heard about the soul, I think I asked this a little bit earlier, the soul contract, your soul purpose, okay? That means, okay, you're coming here to live here to learn. When you're coming here to learn, what does that fundamentally mean? You don't have the information. But if all the information is out here, then you have the information. But if you build a firewall or a filter or a block, you don't have that information, so time, it's a pseudo-time. It's a pseudo-time. You don't have the time. So it's a bit of a dichotomy. The information's there, you just don't have access to it. So what it is a pseudo-time. We don't know what that time looks like. It's certainly not sequential, second by second by second. It's a whole different game out there. It's a whole different game. Okay, and I think this is probably a good point to hit this one, then I'm going to jump. ETs, space travel. If these ETs that are out there, I don't know if you believe in extraterrestrials, if you believe in aliens, you believe in the space guys out there, they're probably way ahead of us. If they figured out a way to transcend this boundary between the two realms, where in essence the space and time is not existent, they could travel across this universe as long as they could reassemble at the other side, or cross, I should say, cross back across the boundary to reassemble. Because if the scientists are correct that we're not real, your consciousness can formulate you and manifest you, we're talking about Star Trek transporter. Beam me up, Scotty. So perhaps that's how interstellar space travel is done, by traversing into that other realm and then traversing back into the physical realm. Maybe that's warp drive. I don't know. But it's kind of an interesting things to think about as we learn. Hopefully we learn more and more about what we're doing. I'm going to keep jumping on here. I think this is an important point. And I think it's the last point, and then we're going to jump off to the end. Soul attachments and detachments. The soul has to attach to this physical body somehow. Somehow it's got to attach to it. So what is it? I don't know. Maybe it's these microtubules the science guys, the medical science guys are talking about. Maybe that's a component of it, how they're doing. when we get into OBEs, I was talking a little bit earlier. Anybody have out-of-body experiences? Is it not cool? It's cool. NDEs, maybe not so cool. But close calls, the SDEs are close calls. The body, the soul, the energy, anything pops out of the physical body. This gets in there. We talked earlier about the vertical perception. The soul has come out of the body, and it's sailing around doing whatever it's going to do. Yeah, Howard.
Also called astral projection.
Astral projection is another terminology for that you're projecting out of the physical body that you're in. Another term for it. When we get into the attachments, detachments, I talked about that example earlier about multiple souls potentially attaching to a physical body. Could that not be the schizophrenia, the exorcisms? MK Ultra. Anybody familiar with MK Ultra program? Okay. It's spooky stuff. This is MK Ultra program. Was our government CIA programs? It's spooky stuff. They were experimenting. Our government in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s were experimenting with stuff in this field that would shake you. I just wish we had the data. I wish we had their information. You know why?
Outside the United States.
In Canada's got some. Some of the others. So our CIA had these programs, thousands of people in these programs in the 50s and 60s, 70s, because the Russians were doing them, others were doing them. We got to do it. They were cracking their souls. They were splitting their personalities, chopping them into pieces psychologically, splitting personalities. And I'll give you an example that's really a little bit scary. But our CIA, when the heat got on in Watergate in the early 70s, the CIA was bringing the heat down. Or I should say the government, the Congress was bringing the heat down on. The director of the CIA ordered that all documents, the programs all be shut down immediately and all documentation, millions and millions and millions of pages of documentation be destroyed. That guy was indicted by Congress. Never got prosecuted. Why? There was no documentation. They didn't even know who was in the program. They didn't know who was in the program. I just wish we had access to that research. The Canadians were part of it. They had a small cluster we were doing. When the Canadians, in the 80s, the Canadians figured out what happened with MK Ultra because they were basically splitting between the zones. And I'll give you an example. It's really going to shake you. The Canadians compensated all of the people that they had, 80 people or something, compensated them $100 and some thousand, just cash, just gave them cash. The government did. Just to sign an NDA, say, we won't sue you, we won't come after you. Some of the stuff that they did, because some of the documentation you mentioned is still out there. When I finished, we were talking about my novel. I finished up the first novel, because a key component of it was the Stanford Research Institute. That's the first one right there. The Stanford Research Institute, because I worked at Stanford Research Institute for 2 years. It was after the program left. Who heard of remote viewing? Who heard of Stargate? All right, I was at SRI after the program left. But the remnants was all around SRI. It was all around. And I talked to people who were there when the programs were going on. In my novel, I wrote a thing, because I was there. I knew I had some of the original, I saw some of the original documents from Stargate. It was like really, really cool. So the premise in that first novel was around, I created another black program that was really black. It was on the past life regression. That was the fundamental stuff behind what I wrote the novels on. It was around a secret CIA program on past life regression, and we can track treasures and do all kinds of stuff with it. Well, I put the first book out, and I just put the second book out, and I get this huge long email from a woman and a guy, and said, I just want to talk to you, blah, 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 blah. So I said, I just want to know where you got the information from on your program that you did at SRI, because we were both in the program. I'm like, ooh, well, my first impression was, yeah, I wrote a good book because I got these people thinking they were in the program. That was my first thing. And the more I dialogued with them, and then eventually a year or so later, we linked up. They said, well, we weren't really in that program. There wasn't really a program on past life regressions at SRI. It was really MK Ultra. But they spun us off. They were doing regressions, passing us, inducing us into the other realm, and they were connecting their souls in the other realm. They were bonding him at the level, so when they did the Jason Bourne thing, you think Jason Bourne, you think Manchurian Candidate is something Hollywood makes up? Jason Bourne was the MK Ultra program. But we don't know because all of the millions and millions and millions of pages of documentation were destroyed by the CIA. I don't have a love for the CIA, believe me. I don't have any love for them. These people were in it. What they did to the guy, they didn't do as much to the way they, because they were teenagers when they did this. And all of, and most of, you know, we talk about soft children. They picked them up as kids because they're more fungible. They're more softer. What they did to the guy, if it's true, was what they did to Jason Bourne if you ever watched the movies. It was torture. To split the soul, split them in the other realm, take them into the other realm, bonding their souls at the other level. Real or not, I don't know. It would make a really good movie, though. I don't know. But it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary. All right. Entities in the other room. I talked about the aliens and ETs. Manifestations. We talk about manifestations. Are we in a hologram? Do we live in the movie The Matrix? Those are some interesting things that we need to really dig into, and we need to understand. All right, this is right at the end of where I'm at. If we know what reality is, does it change the way we think about things? If we really understood, if this really happens, and our soul goes out, it comes in, it comes out, reincarnates, would it change your impression about capital punishment? It certainly changed mine. I was against capital punishment. Now I really understand, well, you're going to go out, you're going to come back anyways. This is not real. That's real. I love to play video games with my boys. Boom! Return, you know, says, you are terminated, return to spawn point. Reincarnate again. My whole viewpoint of capital punishment has changed. And I was talking with somebody else at one of the breaks. The view on abortion has changed. My view on euthanasia has significantly changed. If the model that I see is such a means that it's a torturous life that they're living, allow them, as they say, go in dignity. Hey, return to spawn point. You're going to reincarnate. You're going to reincarnate again. If that's real, and this is not, it certainly changes my view on pulling the plug, and particularly war. Coming out of a military kind of a background, it certainly changed my view on war from a couple of standpoints. One is, God, we got to somehow stop it. You know, it's just I just don't see that we need to be doing the stuff that America's been doing. It's different with other countries, but America, we should be stopping this stuff that we're doing. But then I really look at it and say, if we are a soul, and part of our purpose in life is to come here and learn and experience things, wars may be a necessary part of that evil. It's an evil thing, but there's so many experiences that come from it. I don't like it, but maybe there's a necessary evil in that whole concept of evilness. I'll call it evilness. You know, there's things that are not good, things that are just bad. Does it change the whole thing? Human violence, natural disasters. Well, it was kind of, sometimes maybe it was meant to be. You know, that's where you get. And when you start to talk with many of the experiencers, and you read their books, you read their material, you say, wait, there was a destiny coming to happen, and it was going to happen. And it didn't happen this way, it's going to happen some other way. Because that was the contract that they signed up as a soul to come to experience some traumatic way to end the particular life or something like that. So it changes your view, it changes your reflection. So if we could get to reality and really understood it, then maybe it would change our view. And something I learned from a lot of the regressionists, they say, hey, when they regress people, they what's called hybrids, hybrid people, hybrid souls. They incarnate on this planet, they incarnate on other planets. They say there's other planets that are so boring, they don't want to go there. They love the Earth because it is so dynamic and there's so much stuff going on this particular planet, in this particular human culture that we live in. It's like a video game. It's a fun video game versus a boring video game. I mean, it sounds, and it's maybe some of those scientists who say, do we live in a computer simulation video game? It's a very, very possible thing. Okay, I've got some research on here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up now. But there's lots and lots and lots of research to do out there. So I want to thank you for listening. I want your input. So you can dialogue with me. Give me some feedback. I don't want you again to buy this. What I want you to do is look at it, absorb it, and come up with your own model. Give me some feedback, and then I'll see what we can change. Okay, questions?
I have a question about, I do readings, periodically. But during readings, when I have someone in front of me, I can actually see parts of their life.
Yes.
Actually experience the emotions in that particular part of their life.
Now, what he says is he does certain readings, and when he does it, he will sometimes, when he's connected with the person, he will see parts of their lives. In this life, previous lives, or that life, or
That life.
that life, just so you see parts of their past.
Their past,
Yeah, and that's very, very common. It's a very common thing when you have someone's doing a reading and they connect at that level. You remember the diagram where you're talking with them? You're doing a reading, you're talking with them, but you're going through the loop, you're communicating out. I think where you're getting the stuff is out there in that other room. So I'm with you. Other question? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted, to comment in regard to Princeton, Global Consciousness Project. I really think there's a lot to it, and I think a lot of people who go to New York or live in the region are really tied into that and get feelings. Maybe part of it is still the presence of, One World Trade Center, our souls still tied to the place. But I can tell you, in October of 2017, I was staying around One World Trade Center, and a friend of mine died on American Airlines Flight 11. I just had a feeling something was going to come down again. I left 2 days before they had another, terrorist attack, but not that many people were killed. That was a terrorist attack on the bike trail on Halloween. And I really wanted to stay for the Halloween parade, but I didn't.
Yeah, her comment basically was around the Global Consciousness Project, World Trade Center, the vibes and things. I'm assuming that kind of come through. She got some, I would call it precognitive things when she went back to the Trade Center. I agree. The Global Consciousness Project was not just on that. There were so many others. The Lady Diana, I call her Lady Diana, Princess Diana. There was a huge spike on her. There was a huge spike on every year on World Cup soccer, which is really interesting. World Cup soccer game, the big game, other than the United States, the big game, it spikes. So it may be that there's so much energy at a consciousness level between all of those tens or hundreds of millions of people around the world for World Cup soccer in that big game, the big final game. They're all up there and they're all spiked and it's all this chitter chatter affecting things, computers in the physical realm. It's a possibility. So that's all part of the research. There's so much that we should be poking into to try to understand a little bit more. Any other quick questions? Here we go.
So what is your concept of the capital punishment and the murder?
Well, to me, the question wasn't what's my view based on the model, my personal view on capital punishment after understanding a little bit more about it. This is my personal opinion. Don't take it any way at all. I don't judge anyone or anything. If they've done it, they've absolutely done it. Just wrap them up and terminate them. I already used to terminate. Get them out. Move on. Give that soul the chance to get back in there, recycle, and come on back in. They'll be incarnated again. It's just give them a chance, because don't tie up resources of the human society on that. So that's just my personal opinion. But it didn't used to be that way. I was against it.
So they could have an influence on discipline. They infuse evil thoughts about people, and people feel this tendency to murder and so forth.
It could be. I think there's probably more of a physical nature to it. It may be a physical thing of you set the example, you do this, you're done. That would probably be affected more than the psychological. But I think it's about allow that soul to move on, because you're going to keep them locked up forever. Just keep them in a box. It's not, it's not a good thing. Or, just move them on and then come to it. That's my personal one. It's just, that's just my personal one. I saw another question over here. Yes, ma'am.
It's not a question, really, but it's an odd thing, and I do tend to be skeptical. But I was thinking about the ants, and I've observed many times. Okay, I moved, and you know what a silverfish is? It's a tiny, tiny little thing. And a few times I had seen a silverfish in my bathroom. Now, as long as I see it and observe it, it's just creeping slowly. If I get a tissue and I'm going to kill it, it starts going like this all over.
Yeah.
Same thing with flies.
She's talking about.
Fly to be resting on a shelf, and if I go get a fly swatter, this is my other place, and I have the intention of killing it,
it's gone. I understand. What she's saying, she had seen silverfish or flies and such. When you just observe them, they'll just go about doing whatever they're doing. But if you suddenly have the intention that you are going to terminate that silverfish, you're going to terminate that fly, they go berserk. And I don't think personally, I don't think it's an emanation from your physical body. I think there's a connectivity that you somehow connected with that thing through this other realm, and it knows you're going to wrap them up. And I would kind of, there's a tendency to that. And a lot of it is by observing things like that. That's what my ants, I look at my ants and I say, man, there's something to this with all these ants. There's something to this. That's how it goes. Go ahead, we saw it. Yes, Alma. Okay.
Bob, I love your presentation. Thank you so much. What I want to say is you gave us a lot of information to go away with. And I would like to ask everyone here if they could support you in your research, IANDS, and their research, and this young lady, Greta Thunberg, who is going around on media right now. She's, 11 years old, because she wants to do something about climate change on the planet. How to Start a Movement is a YouTube video I saw 2 or 3 years ago. It's not the first person that counts, it's the second, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. That's how you start a movement. So if we are one consciousness and embrace our children who are 8, 9, and 10, who are frightened that in 2050 there will be more plastics in the ocean than sea life, we can do something as the adults to lead the way. Yeah. So in our prayers and meditations and contemplations, if we can lift their causes for the planet, it would be great.
I agree with you. That's good. Thank you. I saw a question. I'll take a question. As soon as we break, I'll take your question afterwards. Yeah, we need to wrap up and get on. But I'll stay around for a while if you want to talk, and then I'll be going to dinner with the group.
Thank you so much for coming.